Ben Hiller. Amidst this chaos, there is harmony. Throughout these discordant sounds, there is a note of concord, and he who is prepared to listen to it will catch the tone. Swami Vivekananda. I was lecturing at Block and Hexter, an adult Jewish summer camp in the Poconos of Pennsylvania. That day, it was the last lecture. I was reading and speaking about my poetry. A little man, no bigger than 5 feet, a gnome of a man, a little elf, walked down the aisle of the fitness center, came to the second row, and slid himself in next to a neighbor. That neighbor, a tall man with a wrinkled face and a blue baseball cap on, had attended all of my 10 lectures, and in each of my lectures he had a big smile on his face. His eyes were bright and dark brown. His neighbor, the newcomer, after he sat down, took out his little purse and began fumbling in it, counting his money. The little man, the gnome or elf as the case may be, also had a wrinkled face. His nose was pushed in, and his hands, I could see them from behind my lectern, were knobby. They seemed to dance as he fumbled with the coins and spoke loudly to his neighbor, so loudly, in fact, that I had the feeling that I was in competition with him. And so I went on. I read a poem about life and about death, and the little man began to talk even louder. Suddenly the few people who were sitting in the room listening, men and women, all began to shh, 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 with their hands and fingers. Quiet, they all yelled out, and immediately the little man became quiet. He too had on a baseball cap, and throughout my lecture, the reading that is, he began to smile. His dark brown eyes glistened as the time went on, and his mouth curled up in the corners in a wide grin. After the lecture was over and the few people had left the room, the little man came up to the podium slowly and placed his hand on my lectern. Dick, he said to me, I want you to know that your presentation and what you said touched me deeply. I was in Buchenwald, and I remember one day standing in the courtyard and looking up at the bright sun, the blue sky, and the white clouds, and saying, God, give me the strength to survive all this so that I can tell everyone about this suffering. And what you said, as well as your manner of delivery, touched me deeply. I was moved. What is your name? I said to the little man, taking his hand on the lectern in mine. Ben Hiller, he answered. Ben, I said, I want you to know that that is the nicest compliment anyone has ever paid me. I didn't ask the man, as I usually do, how old are you? No, this time I kept quiet and let it pass. I would say, if push came to shove, however, that the little man was in his late 80s or even 90s. But one can never be sure about age or about suffering. Those whom we think are young turn out to be old, and those whom we think will never live another day turn out to survive it all. It all depends on one's luck and on the stars, the sky, the sun, and the clouds that one sees on an early morning in May, while the dawn breaks through and disperses the darkness that has surrounded it. This life is a gift, I thought to myself. That man, Ben Hiller, has stayed in my mind until this very day. Reflecting back now, for a moment, I had the feeling that his face was covered in warts, but of course this all could just have been in my imagination. There's one thing I forgot to mention. Ben asked me if he could have one of my papers. I said, "You mean my poems?" "Yes," he said, "one of your poems. I want to send it to my son with a letter telling him about you and how much it meant to me hearing you speak." I opened my poems and my eye fell immediately on the poem, "When life seems bleak and nothing rhymes, I sit alone and count the times I've lived my life just free from pain, and realize singly once again I'm still alive and writing rhymes. I count myself to be just fine." "Take this poem, Ben," I said. "It was meant for you." "I like this one especially," he said to me. "It recalls that day in Buchenwald when I saw the sun, the blue sky, and the white clouds. Thanks again, Dick, for the joy you are giving us all. When is your next lecture?" "I'm finished, Ben. That was the last one." "Oh, too bad," Ben said. "I stumbled in looking for the other guy and found you here."